Welcome to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, where today I'm going to be talking about helicopter parents.
So the big question is this: how are parents like us, who don't have a manual, who are doing the best we can, who feel as though we aren't enough, how are we going to raise healthy, happy children who we are proud of and still keep our sanity in that process? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Ryan Roy, and welcome to I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, a podcast for parents who are being real with themselves.
Hey, welcome back to this episode of I Don't Know Jack About Parenting, where today I'm going to be talking about helicopter parents. And I stress parents in this because, again, it's just an observation of life. I personally definitely do not know jack about parenting, but what I do know and what I do believe is that if we don't allow them to make their own mistakes, if we don't allow them to fail, if we don't allow them to get hurt under our supervision, if we're always protecting them, they will never learn. And when they go off into the real world, when they're adults, a light switch doesn't come on and they figure it all out. They have to learn as we go. Now, anyone who's been listening to this podcast for some time, I talk about, hey, never bring your kids to the park. But in that episode, it's quite the opposite. It's going to the park allows them to explore themselves and test boundaries and limits while having fun. Kids get hurt at parks all the time. So I was at the park just the other day. And again, this is where this episode comes from. I'm at the park and I have my 18-month-old son and my 7.5-year-old son. And this 7.5-year-old, mind you, this park, I give you a kind of a visual. It has multiple slides. There are no seesaws. There are no merry-go-rounds. There are no swings. But what we do have at this park are rocks. And when I say rocks, I mean big rocks. Anywhere from the smaller ones to be about 3 feet by 3 feet. So not super high, but some of them go as tall as 8 feet. And there's space between these rocks. And guess what the kids love to do? They love to play on them. So my 7.5-year-old tends to be the ringleader when we go over to this park, and he creates obstacle courses for himself, but the other kids see him doing this and they want to do it too. He's been doing this since he's probably 2 years old at this particular park. So we get there and he needed to go to the park. He needed to exert some energy that day. And I'll let you know, moms listening to this, my wife does not go to the park with me. Why? Because she tends to be a little overprotective. And she'll tell him, don't do that. Don't, you're killing me. Now my heart sinks into my stomach almost every single time we go to the park, if not once, but multiple times, right? Because the most precious thing in the world, my son, is bouncing from rock to rock. And just like any other parent, I envision his head bouncing off the rock and us going to the hospital. But who am I to tell him where his comfort zone is? I know where my comfort zone is, but it's not the same as his comfort zone. I am not jumping, and he does this all the time, from about 8 feet high, where every other kid's sliding. They're playing tag, and my son doesn't slide. He just jumps. Just the other day, I saw a kid, maybe 12, 13, goes, oh my goodness, he just jumped off this thing. And I'm thinking, yeah, he did. He does it all the time. And it drives me crazy, because what do I envision? Just like you moms, I envision his ankle breaking or his foot breaking or his knee getting injured or his leg getting injured. But guess what? He's got to learn. His father, that'd be me, used to do a lot of the same stuff and never got injured, right? But he has really strong legs. You want to know why? Because he takes that impact. He runs constantly. He's jumping from rock to rock. So, and then everybody comes up to me and are like, wow, your kid's really athletic. But in the same breath, the same day, these kids are telling their kids not to do these things. Johnny, don't do this. Sarah, can't do. You're going to get hurt. Oh, have any of you ever said that? You're going to get hurt. Now, what do you think that does for a child? No child wants to get hurt, so then they stop exploring. They stop doing these things. And the helicopter parent feels good. Why? Because little Johnny or little Sarah is safe. Safe from what? Life? Because I'm going to tell you what, little Johnny or little Sarah, again, is going to go off to college, and all their friends are going to want to do stuff. Little Johnny or little Sarah is scared. And then you're going to call up little Johnny and say, you make friends? No, Mom, Dad, you know, they want to do things that I'm not comfortable doing. Like what? Like they want to go to the park. What, in the middle of the night? No, in the middle of the day. But, you know, my biggest memories of parks is you always told me I was going to get hurt. Well, you know, that's silly. You're an adult now. But you've programmed your child. Helicopter parent. So, helicopter parents, I'm going to finally come to, I'm at the park and the older one's bouncing, and my little one, 18 months, is looking at his older brother. He's trying to climb the rocks. Now, he can't quite climb them yet. He wants to get on the rocks. But I'm going to give him 6 months before we go on the rocks. And there was this other kid, probably 8 years old, older than my oldest. And he had what seemed to be mom and dad and grandma. And I'm telling you, that kid, all he wanted to do was play on the rocks. And he kept hearing, you're going to get hurt. And I'm not, and he's, no, you can't do that. You're not that coordinated. Listen to what they're feeding this kid. And the kid wasn't coordinated. They've never allowed him to get coordinated. You got to practice this stuff. My son didn't learn it like at 8 years old. He learned it at 9 months when he started walking. And then it built as he felt comfortable. I let him do things. And he built confidence to do certain things. And now he's the kid all over the monkey bars and jumping off the rocks and doing all this because I choose not to helicopter parent. Now, every ounce of me, listen to me, people. If you're listening to this podcast, every ounce of me wants to tell him to stop. Every time he does something, my heart sinks, and I just look over and smile at him and give him the thumbs up like that was awesome. But I'm scared to death watching my kid all over this playground. But what scares me even more is sending him out into the world without having practiced anything, without having taken any risks. And it starts here. And you helicopter parents are doing your children absolutely zero favors. So the grandmother comes up to me and she looks and she's like, oh, wow, he's really good at this. She goes, you know, we just worry about him. He's not that coordinated. I said, well, he didn't start here. I go, he started when he was this guy's age or a little bit older, about 2. She's like, really? I said, these same rocks. He's been on them for years. She's like, oh, well, he's just, I said, you know, with all due respect, because you came up to me, I wasn't gonna, but all I hear is you creating excuses for why you guys hover around him. None of you are serving him. And I hate to be the bearer of that news, but as you helicopter over him, he's going to grow up to be a scared, frightened man who doesn't know how to navigate through the world. So this little one, come back in 6 months and you'll see him walking on these rocks. And I'm going to be scared every step, just like I'm scared every step of him, because that's my job or role as a parent, is to want to protect, but not to the point that they don't grow. You know, I don't know if you hear the words I'm saying or not, but he literally slammed down his fist and says, why won't you let me play? All he wants to do is play. And if he gets hurt, the beauty of him getting hurt here at this age is you're there to pick him up. But you can't keep catching every fall before it ever even happens, because he's never going to grow. She looked at me like I had 5 heads and she walked away. And I'm okay with that, because in my previous episode I said it takes a village. And I think I'm doing a disservice to a parent who's coming up and justifying to me why my kid is doing things, oh, he's just more coordinated, and why their kid is not. My kid's not any more coordinated than any other kid. My kid's just had a lot more practice. But I allow my kid to practice, even though it pains me internally. So I don't know jack about parenting, but I know hovering over your kids, fixing their problems before they're even a problem, doing their homework, which is another episode on here. All of those things do not serve your children. It may make you feel good as a parent, but your job, listen to me, your job from my perspective, and I'm not telling you what to do, is to make productive, respectful future citizens of this world. And they can't be productive out there if they're not productive as young children. And if nobody's allowing them to practice, they're not going to be that. And the parents are going to ask themselves, where did I go wrong? I did everything. You did. And that's where you went wrong. You did everything for them. You didn't allow them to do it for themselves. And I see a lot of it out there. I go to the park often. I see a lot of it out there. I'm going to give this one last example. Just yesterday, I was at the park, and there was a mom, and her and I started chatting. And she's stay at home and homeschooling mom, and you just tell her kids have the utmost confidence. Why? Because mom has confidence in them. And as mom exuded this confidence, another parent from a distance said, hey, look, your kid's on the fence. And she looked and she says, thank you. She looked and her kid was perfectly fine. And that was it. She's not helicopter parenting. Didn't think anything of it. And I just smiled, and I smiled at her, and she shrugged her shoulders. She knew. We got to let them be. Everybody's so worried. And kid's on the fence. It's a 4-foot fence. The kid's capable of the 4-foot fence. She wasn't hurting anybody, and mom was allowing her to explore her limits. Allow your kids to explore their limits. And if they get hurt, be there to pick them up, because you won't be there to pick them up later. See you in the next episode.
Do you want to be the dad you wish you had? If so, go get my free book, Be the Dad You Wish You Had, at BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com. Inside, you'll find my most effective 40 tips to quickly and easily transform yourself into the ideal dad. Go to BeTheDadYouWishYouHad.com now and get it while it's free.